This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick.
This read-in of Chapter 22 of The Fires of Heaven, Birdcalls by Night, and our symbol is the triple Trolloc trident.
TTT.
There's not really three tridents, that's the only other T I could think of.
The triple Trolloc triptych? The terrible Trolloc triptych? There we go.
All right. Lying face down on his blankets with his eyes closed, Matt luxuriated in the feel of Melindra's thumbs kneading their way down his spine. There was nothing quite so good as a massage after a long day in the saddle. Well, some things were, but right then, he was willing to settle for her thumbs. You are well muscled for such a short man, Matrim Coffin. He opened one eye and glanced back at her, kneeling astride his hips. She had built the fire up twice as high as needed, and sweat trickled down her body. Her fine golden hair, close cut except for that Aiel tail at the nape of her neck, clung to her scalp. If I'm too short, you can always find somebody else. You are not too short for my taste, she laughed, ruffling his hair. It was longer than hers. And you are cute. Relax. This does no good if you tense. Grunting, he closed his eyes again. Cute, light, and short. Only Aiel could call him short. In every other land he had been in, he was taller than most men, if not always by much. He could remember being tall, taller than Rand when he rode against Artur Hawkwing, and a hand shorter than he was now when he fought beside Mayachine against the Algari. He had spoken to Lan, claiming he had overheard some names. The warder said Mayachine had been a king of the Aharon, one of the 10 nations. That much Matt already knew, some 400 or 500 years before the Trolloc Wars. Lan doubted that even the Brown Aja knew more. Much had been lost in the Trolloc Wars, and more in the War of 100 Years. These were the earliest and latest of memories that had been planted in his skull. Nothing after Artur Pendrag Ten'real, and nothing before Mayachine of Aharon. "Are you cold?" Melindra said incredulously. "You shivered." She scrambled off him, and he heard her add wood to the fire. There was enough scrub here for burning. She slapped his bottom hard as she climbed back on, murmuring, "Good muscle." Cute.
Dark friend alert.
Yep, she's going to try to kill you, man.
You think your relationships end badly. Jesus.
Right? Not one has tried to stab me.
Really?
No.
Starting off by saying happy birthday to Robert Jordan. He would have been 71 today, before we go any further.
Whoa, happy 71st, RJ.
So, we miss you, as always.
Hopefully you've been spun back out.
Yeah, he's got to be like, what, a 10-year-old boy right now? He's probably reading his own books.
Could be. Matt makes extra sure that Melindra doesn't know who the Daughter of the Nine Moons is, and it doesn't mean anything to her.
I like how offended he is that she calls him short. He's like, I'm only an Aiel could call me short. That's ridiculous.
Of course, later, after he kills a half-man, she says, "You're tall enough for me."
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But he's tall enough for her in this scene.
Oh, totally.
She's just remarking that, Matt's only like 5'11" or whatever it is.
Right, only. But I think the most interesting little bit of what you read is that we get the timeline on Matt's memories.
Mm-hmm. That's easy. That's an easy little fact to forget, that Matt has only memories from battles during this one particular time. That's sort of interesting. On one end, I assume at least that very few generals or people with lots of battle experience went to see the Finn after, the Trolloc Wars?
Oh, well, so he has no memories. So
500 years
before the Trolloc Wars, which is about 500 years after the breaking, give or take. He has memories from when the breaking finally settled down, right? So it was about 500 years when the world was getting broken and Male Aes Sedai were coming out, and so things finally settled down. And my assumption has always been that's when the Red Stone Ter'angreal settled, and that's when people started going into it again.
Nothing after Artur Pendrag and nothing before Mayachine. So Mayachine would have been the earliest, and Artur the oldest.
So that's a about a 1,500 year window, right? From about 500 years after the breaking to about 2,000 years after the breaking.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It's been a long time since I've rebriefed myself on that timeline.
Well, I've got it in front of me.
Perfect.
Yeah. So any man who has entered, my assumption has been any man. I think they're only male memories as far as we know. Any man who's entered the Red Stone Ter'angreal, the Finn get linked to their memories and can essentially mine their entire lives' memories, including their death, after they've entered the Red Stone Ter'angreal.
Gotcha. So they had to go in and come back out.
Exactly.
Or maybe not make it out. Just a mild correction.
That's true.
They had to go in.
They had to go in. Yeah, a lot of them probably don't make it out. But he's got some interesting memories of people who lived at the same time. I'm not sure if there's anything else to really take out of this other than the range of time is this 1,500-year period of time. And I think it coincides with the twisted red stone door frame being available for people to go through it.
That sounds right. Because after that, it was only for the kings of Ma'in, basically. Or the kings and queens.
Right. Well, and didn't they trade it away to
Tyr
at some
point?
Yeah, and Tyr had it
sat in a room.
And then, no one went through it after it went through Tyr.
Fits the timeline, because I think Moraine says 300 years before the Emond's Fielders go through it was when it was given away to Tyr. So if they had held it for a similar amount of time...
So I guess the period of time that I'm wondering is why doesn't he get any memories after Arthur Hawkwing? Because there was at least sounds like 700 years where the people of Mayenne were using the doorway before it went to Tyr. And he doesn't get any of those memories. So why does it stop at Arthur Hawkwing?
I don't know. I'm going to blame the Finn for being murky on that. Maybe their information in their heads wasn't relevant to what Matt's about to do.
Maybe. And clearly they gave him mostly battle memories. They, son of battles, like they call him that. They give him those specific memories to fill the holes in his head.
Here you go, Odin.
Memory and sorrow.
The only thing I wanted to note on the next page, essentially, is Melindra goes through this whole thing. I could read just a couple lines, like, it's strange that you efface yourself, so efface myself? And Matt's kind of quietly making fun of himself a little. You put yourself in the shadow of Randall Thor. Your scars should be scars of honor, earned in your own name as a chief.
And who does this remind me of? Lanfear.
Yes. Honor.
Glory.
It should all be yours, Matrim Coffin.
I can rule by your side, and we can challenge the Dragon Reborn. Yeah, it's just very, very dark friend ambition, just like Lanfear.
Yeah. And I interpret Matt as being really interested here. He has some very sober thoughts about women in general, but also each time that they get really cute, like after that conversation, Matt asks her again, so, daughter of the 9 moons, nothing? Really? Are you sure? And
when he's really, really attracted to a girl, that's when he starts asking her about whether or not she's the daughter of the 9 moons.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
And then Matt's like, if you are lying to me, I will welt your rump. And she's like, oh, you think you can? He's like, I'll try. And he's like, but are you sure? Before, again, right after that.
Are you sure you're not? No, it's a whole 2 pages where he's like, yeah, sure you're not the daughter of the 9 moons?
And I also kind of wanted to read, in the middle of all that, Matt is just thinking to himself, maidens and others, he liked giving things to pretty women, even if all he got in return was a smile. He never expected more. If a woman did not enjoy a kiss and a cuddle as much as he did, what was the point? I just thought that was reflected nicely on Matt.
It does.
Be a flirt, but, not a pushy one. Fine.
He does always seem to find women who are willing. That's good on him. I noticed that here he says she wouldn't use the last bit of her name, and we know because she's Shido. I don't know, and Shido she's sort of in this weird position where she's part of the maidens, but she's one of the Shido maidens, which is sort of this weird group who are clearly loyal to Rand, but aren't really trusted because they're, Shido.
Yeah, some of the different societies decided to join with their societies rather than join with the Shido, but it's also happening in the opposite direction.
I think it's just the maidens, the Shido maidens who come.
Oh, I'm talking about the bleakness.
Yeah, and so but a lot of people are fleeing to the Shido to join their society. They're leaving their clan to join the society. The only people who are going in the reverse direction are the maidens, who have left the Shido clan to join the maiden society.
Oh, I didn't even realize that it was only maidens. I think you might be right, though.
As far as I know, there are no Shido men with Rand al'Thor. I don't think there's a single one.
Folks in Discord, call us out if you can think of any male Shido who joined their society and followed Rand al'Thor anyway, but I think you're right. I can't think of a single example.
Sure. No, and not everyone who gets the bleakness ends up going to the Shido. That's just... some of them end up going to the Tinkers, which I always thought was interesting, and probably the right place. A lot of them end up just being Gaishain forever, and I imagine some of them just flee back to the Waste. Probably to die out, but...
It could be. Yeah, I don't know. They would be accepted anywhere if they didn't join at least one of those two groups.
Mm-hmm.
As Melindra and Matt are rolling around in bed and being flirty...
Yeah, exactly. The alarms go off.
A blackbird called seemingly everywhere in the tent, and outside as well, and a moment later a redwing. Good Two Rivers birds. Rand had chosen his warnings from what he knew, birds not found in the Waste. Which is wise, by the way.
We actually see the wards that get set up work. Like, how often does Moraine set up a ward and is like, this will warn us if any shadow spawn come near, and then it does nothing? And this is where he actually sets off, basically, instead of using an alarm or like a warning sign, he's using a bird call, but it's loud everywhere in the entire camp for everybody as soon as the shadow spawn cross his ward.
Yeah, good move. Matt notes the call of the redwing meant an attack was coming from the south.
And he's in the south.
Right. He's as far to the south as he could be, so his tent's right there. And the call of the blackbird meant to the north, where the Sherrod were camped. But from two sides at once.
And I think it's also important to point out, at this point, between the last time we saw him being attacked by the Darkhound and Moraine try to heal him and fail, and now he's figured out what the Foxhead medallion does. So, like, he puzzled it out. So he mentions here he'd finally figured out that the medallion had somehow kept Moraine from healing him on his first try. So long as he had been touching it, her channeling had not affected him. And so this is where, like, all of a sudden, Matt levels up a little bit because he's kind of immune from channeling.
He knows how to use his tools.
Yeah. He's, like, figuring out his luck. He's got the fighting down pretty good with the Ashendari, and he knows he's immune to channeling. So this is really Matt at his most, not his most powerful, but one might say at sort of he's leveled up to General Odin Matt.
And the memories are like integrated. He just goes ahead and uses them rather than saying like that's not real or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. No, he's totally like used all the tools that he gained by going through the doorway. He finally knows how to use them, and how to use them to his advantage.
Nodding. All around him, Aiel, some unclothed or only half, but all black-veiled, fought Trollocs with tusked boar snouts or wolves' muzzles or eagles' beaks, some with heads horned or crested with feathers, wielding those oddly curved swords and spiked axes, hooked tridents and spears. Here and there, one used a huge bow to shoot barbed arrows the size of small spears. Men fought alongside the Trollocs, too, in rough coats, with swords, shouting desperately as they died among the thorn bushes, Samael! Samael and the golden bees! The Dark Friends were dying, most as soon as they engaged in Aiel, but the Trollocs died harder. I'm no bloody hero, Matt shouted, to no one in particular as he battled a Trolloc with a bear's muzzle and hairy ears, his third. The creature carried a long-handled axe, with half a dozen sharp spikes and a flaring blade big enough to split a tree, throwing it about like a toy in those great hairy hands. It was being near Rand that got Matt into these things. All he wanted from life was some good wine, a game of dice, and a pretty girl or three. I don't want to be mixed up in this, especially not if Samael was around. Do you hear me? The Trolloc went down with a ruined throat, and he found himself facing a Myrdraal, just as it finished killing two Aiel who had come at it together. The half-man looked like a man, pasty pale, armored in black overlapping scales like a snake's. It moved like a snake, too, boneless and fluid and quick. Night-black cloak, hanging still however it darted, and no eyes, just a dead white sweep of skin where eyes should be. That eyeless gaze turned on him, and he shivered, fear oozing along his bones. The look of the eyeless is fear, they said in the borderlands, where they should know, and even Aiel admitted that a Myrdraal stare sent chills through the marrow. That was the creature's first weapon. The half-man came at him in a flowing run. With a roar, Matt rushed to meet it, spear spinning like a quarterstaff, thrusting, ever moving. The thing carried a blade as dark as its cloak, a sword hammered at the forges of Thakandar, and if that cut him, he was good as dead unless Moraine appeared quickly with her healing. But there was only one sure way to take down a Fade. All-out attack. You had to overwhelm it before it overwhelmed you, and a thought for defense could be a good way to die. He had not even spare a glance for the battle raging around him in the night. The Myrdraal's blade flickered like a serpent's tongue, darted like black lightning, but to counter Matt's attack, when raven-marked power-wrought steel met Thakandar-made metal, blue light flashed around them, a crackle of sheet lightning. Suddenly, Matt's slashing attack struck flesh, black sword and pale hand flew away, and the reverse stroke sliced open the Myrdraal's throat, but Matt did not stop, thrust through the heart, cut one hamstring, then the other, all in rapid succession. Only then did he step away from the thing still thrashing on the ground, flailing about with its good hand and severed stump, wounds spilling inky blood. Halfmen took a long time to admit that they were dead. They did not die completely, except with a setting sun. Looking around, Matt realized that the attack was over. Whatever dark friends or Trollocs were not dead had fled, at least. He saw none standing except Aiel. Some of them were down, too. He plucked a kerchief from the neck of a dark friend's corpse to wipe the Myrdraal's black blood from his spear point. It would etch the metal if left too long. This night assault made no sense. By the bodies he could see in the moonlight, Trolloc and human, none had made it much past the first line of tents, and without far greater numbers, they could not have hoped for more. Thought I'd leave it there because that ran long anyway. But this is what we were talking about at the beginning of the episode, or maybe that was off recording.
How badass he's leveled up to? I mean, again, him leveling up again.
Matt has leveled up to a badass, totally. But the point of this attack, my first instinct was to say this wasn't an attack from Samael. It was a suicide attack meant to fail to make Rand resentful of Samael and go after him. So probably planned by another of the Forsaken.
Maybe.
Which, that's what Asmodean says in a second.
Yeah, but this feels a lot like the Ravine attack from earlier as well. It's almost an exact duplicate of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to wonder if maybe it's not Ravine doing another. Although we do, like I said, we here in a second we have Rand, or we have Lewis Theron's memories verifying that this is probably Samael. That
he would do something like that, something that overt.
Which always makes me wonder if maybe Samael wasn't the one behind the earlier attack, not Ravine. The whole, like, who's behind which attack is always very confusing to me because the Forsaken like to dress up as each other. Or just, like, generic Forsaken and, like, appear. And like, the Myrdraal themselves have no idea who's actually commanding them.
Yeah. To answer you, Keith, who's asking, wasn't that the plan from the last Dark Friend social? Get Rand to attack Samael and Ravine Grendel, catch him unaware? I don't think that we actually see what Lanfear's plan is, just that they all accept it.
Right.
But that is not a bad theory. I wouldn't put it past him to try to do something like that. Of course, Lanfear's working against them. She's more in Rand's camp at this point still.
Yeah, she's mostly there to support him. Mostly, well, to support herself, really.
Yeah. So that could very well be it. There's also, like you said, Seth, there's always so many layers. Like, did Ravine do the first one and Samael did the second one to get Rand to go after Ravine, or did Samael do both? And he's just poking Rand, being like, "Here I am. What? You scared? Like, I'm gonna make one of these attempts at your life every night until you come after me in my stronghold." That could very well be it too.
Yeah, and then we have the whole weird conundrum where Matt's girlfriend goes after him, right? And what triggers it? When he says, "I'm going to Andor," which implicates Ravine. But she goes after him with an Ileana dagger, which implicates Samael.
And we've speculated that anyone could get one of these daggers with an Ileana like inscription on it. It could be made, whatever, So it could go either way. It could mean Samael's trying to poke him, or it could mean someone's trying to poke him and implicate Samael.
And so it's something I've struggled with as to, whenever I've read these, is I don't know who's sending these troops against him, Samael or Ravine. And I don't have definitive proof either way on any of these attacks, because it seems like we have proof both ways for both attacks.
Well, okay, at the bottom of Melindra's WoW-Wiki article, it says it's unclear where Melindra's orders come from.
Which is kind of what we've been saying?
It's repeating back at me what we just said. So. I haven't reread also the attack on Ravine in a real long time. But he's saying...
I mean, yeah, Ravine is clearly set up to be attacked, right? Like, he's got inverted weaves all over his city. He's preparing for a serious attack. So that makes me think that he's the one orchestrating all of this stuff.
He wants to be attacked.
Yeah. But then why is he implicating Samael? Samael's another one who I don't really get what his motivations were. I don't fully understand why he went to Shadar Logoth. And so I would see Ravine and Samael are the two Forsaken that I understand the least what their motivations are. And that might have a lot to do with I'm not really sure who's directing what at what time.
Yeah, it's hard to say. And we only see like pieces of their meetings, so we don't know what's going to happen. I'm sure on purpose.
And we have those two attacks that are very, very similar.
Well, I have a bit more to read from the attack that is just Rand and Aviendha. So Matt's like in the thick of battle, and Rand walks outside of his tent, which is like in the center of the camp, not being attacked. But his guards have rushed off to join the battle.
I had one thing to say about Matt, where he says he's wiping the black blood from his spear point. It would etch the metal if left too long.
Right.
But isn't it a power forged blade? Like, totally unetchable?
Yeah, but he doesn't really understand.
He does talk about the fact that it is power forged. So I think it's more Raven-marked power wrought steel met Thakandar made metal, blue light flashed. Which, again, is a reference to when Tom fought a Myrdraal, blue light flash. That's why we think his daggers were power wrought, right?
Just like that.
So I think maybe it's just he thinks it's going to etch the metal of a regular sword and just doesn't even think about it.
Yeah, I thought of that very much as like when Lan, I believe, is telling Rand about Heronmark swords and what that means and their properties, and Lan says that he knows men who have had one and refuse to stop sharpening it, that they just refuse to believe that it just stays sharp.
Right, and I bet there's something similar with the...
They're like, sure, yeah, it's much, much finer metal than anything we can make, but it's still metal. They won't believe that it's something else. Mm-hmm. You know? I see it as along similar lines. He's taking care of it in the way that you normally would, even though he doesn't really have to.
Right. And you don't want to, like, sheathe the blade. I guess he doesn't really have a sheath for it, does he?
No. Just
kind of carries around a bare blade all the time, just on the end of a stick.
It's long enough, I guess.
I guess, yeah.
And Melindra says, I saw you with the Night Runner, Matt Coffin. You're tall as a man needs to be.
And here's a line that I don't really remember, where he says most of his memories were from Manetheren. Some of those had been from before the Twisted Doorway. So even after going through the doorway, most of his memories are from Manetheren, which makes sense. I mean, they're from the 1,000-year time period when Manetheren was around.
Implying that he would have had memories no matter what, possibly of past lives?
And we saw a little bit of that. Yeah, I mean, we saw some of the old blood coming out where he had certain statements, a couple of maybe like one or two old memories.
Yeah.
But this line is interesting that he does say, like, it was one of those things that, like, you can kind of skip over because his memories are from all over the place, but most of his memories were from Manetheren. I wonder if it's just easier to give him memories from people who he's related to.
I think a lot of that, and I could also say again that they're relevant memories, so like memories that could be useful to him. Mm-hmm. So the history of Manetheren would have been steeped in combating Shadowspawn.
Sure.
And also that I'm really glad he pointed that out, because I had kind of skimmed right by it while prepping for this chapter, that he would have had memories from dead men either way, whether he went through the doorway or not.
Right. Just a lot fewer and a lot less detailed.
Yeah.
More of just like a occasional phrase or word or image, I imagine.
If Finn were more like, here, have some more, then here's a unique gift.
Yeah, they're definitely not memories of past lives or not exclusively past lives, simply because he has memories of people he could absolutely not be related to.
And on the both sides of the same battles.
Sure. Sure. So at the same time, Rand's hanging out in the middle of the camp, right?
Yeah, he's at least closer to the center of the camp, so the attacks are not happening anywhere near him. He hears the alarm, walks outside, and he's just looking around, kind of noting that his guards are gone, probably rushed off to join the battle. And Aviendha had come out into the moonlight, a blanket wrapped around her. Just beyond her stood a tall man, shrouded in a dark cloak. Moon shadows drifted over a gaunt face that was too pale, with eyes too large. A crooning rose, and the cloak opened into wide, leathery wings like those of a bat. Moving as in a dream, Aviendha drifted toward the waiting embrace. Rand channeled, and a finger-thin balefire burned past her, an arrow of solid light, to take the Draghkar in the head. The effect of the narrow stream was slower, but no less than with the Darkhounds. The creature's colors reversed, black to white to black, and it became sparkling motes that melted in air. Aviendha shook herself as the crooning ended, stared at the last particles as they vanished, and turned to Rand, gathering the blanket closer. Her hand came up, and a stream of fire as thick as his head roared toward him. Startled, even inside the emptiness, never thinking of the power, he threw himself to the ground beneath the billowing flames. They died in an instant. "What are you doing?" he barked, so angry, so shocked that the void cracked and Sidene vanished from him. Sidene, rather. He scrambled to his feet, stalking toward her. "This tops any ingratitude I've ever heard of." He was going to shake her until her teeth rattled. "I just saved your life in case you failed to notice, and if I offended some bloody Aiel custom, I don't give a—" "The next time," she snapped back, "I will leave the great Karakarn to deal with matters by himself." Awkwardly clutching the blanket close, she ducked stiffly back into the tent. For the first time, he looked behind him, at another Draghkar, crumpled on the ground in flames.
I want to point out specifically the difference in reaction that Rand has and the reaction that Tuon has to the same situation. Because when Matt attacked someone behind Tuon, she immediately looked to see who he was attacking. Whereas Rand gets angry. Tuon's a better, more trusting, wonderful person.
Also accustomed to being a ruler.
I just always thought it's that she trusted that Matt would never try to attack her. Whereas he's like, "What are you doing attacking me?"
Yeah, it could be. I saw it more as Rand, like he's still really coming into leadership. He doesn't, I feel like, have a good grasp that the people around him are there to protect him. Whereas Tuon might expect that, even.
That's true. She is familiar with, like, people trying to assassinate her a lot more.
Or not, I'm not sure. Watch where you're putting that fire, rather than, why'd you put that fire there?
Right, exactly.
Wrong question, I think.
And this does seem to be the goal of the attack, because clearly, like, there weren't enough troops to do any damage to the massive number of Aiel.
Yeah.
So the Draghkar do seem to be the point of this attack, but, I mean, I guess they get close.
I mean, if Aviendha hadn't been there,
yeah, it just
Rand
seems
might
like
not have made it.
More of like poking an anthill than actually trying to like wipe out Rand.
Yeah. It's obviously not a serious attack, although there's like a possibility for success. So while a lot of the fighters are distracted, these two assassins drop down from the sky and try to take out Rand. Are they still trying to kill Rand? I always forget when it switches from kill him to definitely don't.
Yes, they are trying to kill him, because basically they're trying to recruit him up until he kills, well, up until the end of the Great Hunt, and then Ishmael's fucking pissed and tries to actually kill him at the end of the Dragon Reborn. And obviously, and Bilal has a setup to kill him and to take the sword from him. I think at this point they're trying to kill him. It's not until yeah, the streams cross and Moradin comes back, that he forbids anyone from trying to hurt him, because then he's sort of physically... Also, Moradin is sort of like watching him, and like Moradin, I feel like rescinds the kill him. He's the only one, essentially, who wants to convert Rand rather than destroy him. All the other Forsaken just want Rand out of the way. And so right now, it's funny that the person who probably keeps Rand the safest is Ishmael. Because he has so many opportunities to kill him, and he often doesn't. You know, there's one time when there's a Myrdraal who has an opportunity to kill Rand, and he backs up and is like, no, you belong to the Dark One. And he just leaves.
Yeah.
It's like way back in The Great Hunt. You know, like that's under Ishmael's orders.
Yeah, that's like one of the first chapters of The Great Hunt, I think. It's before they even leave Shinar.
So, you know, you really see sort of the internal politics as to whether or not to convert him or not. And I really do think that Ishmael's the number one, like, convert first, kill later. Because he understands that, like, all the other Forsaken are in it for power and to rule. Ishmael's not. He's in it to destroy everything. And he knows the best way to do that is to convince the Dragon Reborn to do it.
Yeah. Ishmael's definitely, of the Forsaken, the one most aligned with the actual Dark One. The others are just kind of... selfish. Yeah. Petty fascist rulers or something, but with superpowers.
Totally.
The three Wise One Dreamwalkers come running up. Amis says, Oh, only one. Thank the light, but I'm surprised. Rand says, there were two. I destroyed the other one. But also says, if Aviendha had not killed this one, it might have gotten me.
That's true. After this, she really doesn't want to be in the tent with him. I have to wonder if maybe his apology, like, yeah, he fucked up and she's angry at him, but I always thought that the reason she's really angry at him is that she's, like, in love with him and worried about him, and that he almost died. And that he, like, apologizes, and that, like, makes her feel, but she's like, I got angry at you, and I thought I had a reason to be angry, but you apologized and were nice about it, so now I kind of love you even more. Damn it.
And they both just saved each other's lives.
Totally. Within
seconds, which is a bonding moment.
A little bit, yeah. I saved your life, you saved mine.
I think that's fair to say.
Of course, his reaction was not good, but...
Yeah, but I agree with you. I don't think that that's what Aviendha is upset about at all. She's not upset that for a few seconds he misinterpreted what she did and then immediately realized it was wrong and apologized. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't think that's...
It's the best he can do, although reacting better.
It's the kind of thing where, like, if one of your friends does that, you're like, you're an idiot, whatever. Like, and you get over it, because it's fine. They call themselves out. Don't be so dumb next time. But it's not like a long... I think she's upset because she wants to make out now.
That's kind of why I always think she's upset at Rand.
And to put it in a lowest common denominator way.
Yeah.
The Wise Ones show up. They hear the news.
Egwene gets pissed at Rand for upsetting Aviendha, even though she doesn't understand. He doesn't understand. Yeah, totally.
I thought it was cute that Melaine says, like, if you don't need us, then we must go see what's happening below. And she rushes off, and Bear and Amis are following slowly. And Bear says, do you care to take a wager, basically, on who she checks on first? Her first sister or her new husband?
That's always a funny little... They keep giving her shit for falling in love with this with Bale and her first sister. I like that little sort of world building in the background.
Melaine says first sister, but Bear says... A first sister is a first sister, but a new husband? And then they wander off, and Moraine arrives.
Where was Moraine, and what was she doing? And why is she blushing about it? Her voice was as coolly mysterious as it had ever been, yet even in the moonlight, Rand was certain that she was blushing. Lan looked troubled, though with him it was difficult to tell. I cannot hold your hand forever. Eventually, you must walk alone. What the hell was she doing? Was she just sleeping?
I don't know. Maybe she was just sleeping, and that's why she feels embarrassed. Because she wasn't there immediately.
I think it has something to do with paying attention to the wagons and her final death.
Herself rather than him,
yeah.
Essentially.
Because the last thing we heard about her is, like, she was paying way too much attention to those wagons. And maybe she's just embarrassed and doesn't want to say, like, hey, I was going over those wagons one more time. And that would explain why Lan looked troubled, because he's like, why is she... Because he doesn't understand what's going on with her obsession with those wagons either, because she hasn't shared with him
Rand tries to puzzle it out in his head like a paragraph or two down. She was not afraid of that, he was sure. So why did she not come when she sensed the Draghkar? She could have, and Lan as well. That was one of the gifts a warder received from the bond between him and an Aes Sedai. He could make her tell, catch her between her oath to him and her inability to lie straight out. No, he could not, or would not. He would not do that to someone who's trying to help him. And then he just kind of lets it go.
Right, and I don't know if we ever get an answer there. Certainly nothing obvious to me. So, anyway, it was something to keep an eye out for. Maybe, yeah, I mean, she knows about Asmodean, so maybe she was checking on him first.
Maybe.
Well, keep our eyes open. Let's see if we can spot any clues.
We also see Rand say, at least now we know what the attack below is about. That's how he changes the subject. To make me think something important was happening there while the Draghkar slipped in on me. They tried that at Cold Rock's Hold, and it did not work there either. You would think they would try something different. Again, we already speculated about this. We're not exactly sure who's doing this or precisely why, but I think no matter what, it's someone trying to bait him into coming after them.
Coming after Samael, whether it's Samael or Ravine.
Yeah.
Part of me is more and more convinced that it's Ravine setting up Samael.
I could buy either one. And he goes after them in quick succession after this. He goes after Samael, and then he goes after Ravine.
That's true. Yeah, that does happen pretty quick. There's more of the sort of background Aiel culture with the maidens having run away to fight when they heard the warnings, and they have a ton of tow to him for doing that. I mean, we talk about how like the maidens carry his honor, and they end up beating the shit out of him for him running away from them. It's hard to imagine these two weren't like severely, or whoever was with him weren't severely punished for running away.
Yeah, luckily Rand accidentally handles it well. If only he knew how little he knew, he could have handled it even better. Basically, Adelin shows back up, and she says there was nothing here, the attack was all below. Dark friends and Trollocs. Adelin presents her spears to him, as do the rest of the guards that are with her. Although I did notice that Adelin tries to take full responsibility. She is in charge.
Right. And I looked her up, and she seems to be one of those Aiel maidens who pops up occasionally, but doesn't seem to have a big role that I could tell. She's just sort of...
Not huge. She's like a captain of the guards character. Important and around, but she doesn't have like her own plot line as far as I can remember.
Mm-hmm. She's like generic Aiel guardsman. Although next chapter we do get to see her in the children's outfit, the one that we saw Egwene in, the braids and carrying around a doll.
Yeah.
So that ends up being their punishment for all of these maidens for running away, is basically being branded as children and being childish.
Yeah, I mean, Adelin even says it herself. Like, we should have waited here and guarded you instead of rushing off like children towards the nearest sign of noise, you know?
Right. It's like when you watch little kids play soccer and they just mob the ball rather than like...
just everyone in a tight circle in one place. Rand at first says, well, just take your damn spears back and go guard the tent. Like, don't worry about it.
Yeah, nothing happened. You're fine. Which is the wrong way to handle that, because they do feel like they owe him something.
Rand goes and talks to Asmodean after that. Oh, maybe it's in the next chapter.
Yeah.
Adelin approaches him again, in any case, and says, we really do have to talk about that. And Rand's like, listen, I don't understand what's going on here, but if you really need someone to handle this for you, then go talk to Mullane. Or he says, like, go talk to Mullane and Bear then. And they do. And that's why we see them the next day doing Mullane's favorite punishment, which is dressing you up like a child and making you carry a doll around.
It's shaming.
Yeah.
It's better than staying on the corner of the street holding a sign saying, I'm a liar, I'm a thief, or something like that. You ever seen those punishments? It's like, it's all about embarrassing you, yeah. To the point, shaming you to the point where you're never going to do it again.
If you're gonna act like a child, then you can look like one too. Maybe that'll make you think twice.
Random tangent. I kind of miss Perrin in this book.
Oh god, yeah. This is the one where you get almost no Perrin, right?
There is none at all. He is currently enjoying his honeymoon and traveling. He's walking from the Two Rivers to, I want to say Andor? Camelin? Because that's the next time we see him, as he arrives with Fael and a whole bunch of retainers to meet up with Rand in the beginning of the next book. I don't know exactly when he's left, but, he's in the timeline's a little murky as opposed to, because we just know he shows up. But yeah, he's having a grand old time right now. I still miss him, though.
He's just having a honeymoon. Leave him alone.
Yeah. He is enjoying being married.
Yeah, because they just got married, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or at the end of the last book, I think.
The last time we saw him, basically. And then we get into what I think is some of the most interesting chunks of this chapter, which is Rand talking as though he was LTT. Rand
goes to Asmodean's tent, and Asmodean first tries to beg off, like, listen, I didn't want to go out there and fight for various reasons. What if someone saw me channeling, first of all?
What if you sensed me channeling?
Yeah. And Rand says, I'm glad you didn't run out during the attack, because I may have just killed you if I saw you running around channeling amongst the Dark Friends. Asmodean says, I might have thought of that too. But they're in the middle of the conversation, basically. They start talking about the attack, and Asmodean seems convinced that like, he's in the Ravine camp. Like, he thinks that Ravine is sending people with all this Ilian paraphernalia, yelling Samael and stuff, to get Rand to go attack Samael. And hopefully destroy him, or at least weaken him, so that he can be taken out of the picture. But Rand thinks the opposite, and we'll see here.
I mean, I guess Asmodean doesn't specify exactly who he thinks it is. Just like, it could be anybody. You never know. The Trollocs and the Myrdraal and the Dark Friends don't know for sure that it was Samael.
Oh yeah, that's true. He doesn't specify, but he's basically, it could have been anyone, including Samael. Rand says, it was Samael who sent the attack this night. The Trollocs and Dark Friends, anyway. It is not like Samael to throw men away, Asmodean said slowly, but he'll see 10,000 dead, or 10 times that, if it gains him what he thinks is worth the cost. Maybe one of the others wants you to think it was him, even if the Aiel took prisoners. Trollocs do not think of much besides killing, and Dark Friends believe what they are told. It was him. He tried to bait me into attacking him once in the same way, at Sarendahar. Oh, light. The thought drifted across the surface of the void. I said me. He did not know where Sarendahar had been, or anything but what he had said. The words had just come out. After a long silence, Asmodean said quietly, I never knew that. What I want to know is why. Rand chose his words carefully, hoping they were all his. He remembered Samael's face, a man, not mine, not my memory, he thinks, a compact man with a short yellow beard. Asmodean had described all the Forsaken, but he knew this image was not made from that description. Samael had always wanted to be taller, and resented it, that the power could not make him so. Asmodean had never told him that. From what you've told me, he is not likely to want to face me unless he is sure of victory, and maybe not then. You said he'd likely leave me to the Dark One, if he could, so why is he sure he'll win now, if I decide to go after him? They discussed it in the dark for hours without coming to any conclusion. Asmodean held to the opinion that it had been one of the others, hoping to send Rand against Samael, and thus get rid of one or both. At least, Asmodean said that he did. Rand could feel the man's dark eyes upon him, wandering. That slip had been too big to cover. When he finally returned to his own tent, Adeline and the dozen maidens all sprang to their feet, all of them at once telling him that Egwene was gone, and Aviendha long asleep, that she was angry with him. They both were. They gave so many different pieces of advice on handling the two women's anger, all at the same time, that he could understand none of it. Finally they fell silent, looks passing between them, and Adeline spoke alone. We must speak of tonight, of what we did, and what we failed to do. It was nothing, he told her, and if it was something, it's forgiven and forgotten. I would like to have a few hours' sleep, for once. If you want to discuss it, go talk to Amis or Bear. I am sure they'll understand what you're after more than I do. That shut them up, surprisingly, and let him get inside. Aviendha was in her blankets, with one slim bare leg sticking out. He tried not to look at it, or her. She had left a lamp lit. He climbed into his own blankets gratefully, and channeled the lamp out before releasing Saidin. This time he dreamed of Aviendha hurling fire, only she was not hurling at a Draghkar, and Samael was sitting at her side, laughing.
So yeah, this is where we see Rand is having memories from his previous life, but still not hearing the voice of LTT. And we're seeing the same thing with Matt. And this is something I've talked about over and over and over again. But my opinion really is that the memories are separate from the voice of LTT. And the voice of LTT is the result of insanity. And the memories are a result of the taint, but they are not related. And the memories aren't part of LTT, if that makes sense.
It does.
I think this is one of the really specific pieces of information where we see him gain those memories long before we've really ever heard the voice of the madman in his head.
Nodding to that one.
My guess would be, sort of after hearing you read that, in terms of who is actually sending the troops, is that Rand is wrong about it being Samael, and that Ravine is setting him up to attack Samael, and that Ravine knows about this attack. And because it's the same attack that Ravine did earlier. Like, more and more I'm just talking to myself into convincing myself that Rand is wrong about Samael, even though it's something that Samael did earlier, and that it really is like a Ravine setup.
Also nodding.
Because Ravine, we saw him engage. Rand sent his troops up into Cairhien in order to basically feed them. And that's what triggered the first attack from Ravine. And once again, that's what Lanfear says. And who do we believe, Lanfear or Asmodean? I don't know. It's just, I'm feeling more and more confident that both of these attacks are Ravine and not Samael at all.
Nodding to it all. I'm not convinced in any direction.
No, I don't have evidence. I'm just deciding on a headcanon.
We were just talking about Sorelea. That's why I wanted to turn this on.
We see that she's badass in other people's reactions to her, but rarely do we get to see her being badass.
Yeah, she's really just a human woman. Like, she can't really channel much. We see her make a little flame, and that's about all she can channel, I feel like, is noted.
Don't they say she, would not be tested for the Shawl in the White Tower? She's, she's barely stronger than, Morghese.
Right.
But yet she manages to have the personality of leadership and that sort of will to make people do what she wants.
Yeah, she's a natural leader. Or maybe highly practiced, because isn't she, 200 years old or something? She's quite old. I should look that up, actually.
Sorelea? Yeah, because isn't she because she can channel a little bit, she's 150 or something like that?
I thought I recalled her being one of the eldest of the wise ones. Wiki says over 200.
Oh, okay, yeah.
She's described as not strong enough to become accepted.
Okay.
And she seems to have the knack for quick learning, which is a type of talent. If she sees a weave once, she can reproduce it, but only in a scaled down size, I guess.
Yeah, only if she's powerful enough.
Interesting.
Talir was asking a question. Why aren't there more old Aiel channelers? I kind of have to assume it's just the hard life that you live in the Waste. That you're just, when you've been alive for 200 years, you're much more likely to get bit by a snake or a poisoned toad or step on something. The Waste is dangerous. I think the longer you live, the more likely you are to be killed in some random accident. That's the only reason why I can assume that there aren't more old Aiel wise ones.
Yeah, I can't really think of much of a good reason either. If Sorelea is even one of the eldest at a little over 200.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how old is Cadsuane?
Cadsuane's 300.
Who's is she the oldest person we meet other than the Forsaken?
No, not at all. Because there are definitely
Olivia,
and there's kin that are significantly older than Cadsuane.
That's right. Yeah, that's true.
As well as TFoH that are considerably older than Cadsuane. She's the oldest Aes Sedai.
That's a great question. I can't think of a good justification other than what you said. Just that.
I have the same problem with male channelers in the Two Rivers. It's we hear about all these female channelers who die of channeling sickness because they don't figure out their wilders. Shouldn't there be male wilders as well?
Or, yeah, at least every once in a while, someone, goes insane and blows something up. You'd think it would happen more often.
Right.
Although I guess it's rare enough. Who knows?
Like, it seems like you'd have more legends of men channeling in the Two Rivers and going off. Like we definitely hear about male Aiel channelers. Where are all the male Two Rivers channelers?
Shaking my head.
Yeah, just a thought. There's a couple. I mean, I love Jordan's world building, but there's a few little inconsistencies like that where it's like, if you really had that much of the population able to channel, you'd have more random channelers popping out. The numbers don't quite work. And you can say like almost nobody who could be taught is being taught, so that like still is like 1% of the population.
Yeah. And we have a genetic randomness, I guess, but also wise ones can't be or won't be attacked for any reason or murdered. But Aviendha could have died before she was trained.
Sure.
So maybe that just thins out the numbers, of people who make it there. Because I feel like once you make it to Wise One, nothing's going to happen to you. But you got to make it. And lots of women are lost in that process, too, even before.
Yeah, that's
once
a good point.
they are being trained.
Yeah.
Although, I guess the White Tower does as well. I don't know. I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere on that one.
Do you feel like you're going around in a big wheel of time on that one?
Yes.
Yes.
Or a wheel
Same
of logic.
argument over and over again.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?